8 influencers, 10 different portfolios, who shared the best crypto portfolio and who shared the worst. Each one starts with 10K, evenly split between their picks or allocated as described in their video. Performance is tracked from the video's release date. Let's dive in. Becker, one of the most polarizing voices in crypto, known for his heavy focus on gaming and AI plays. In March 2024, he released a portfolio packed with exactly that. Gaming coins like Beam, IMX, Super, Cetify, Citus, and AI tokens such as 0x0, AEAS, PAL, and ZKML. High risk, high reward, but this time the risk side dominated. Almost every coin in the portfolio is down massively, with many dropping over 90% from their highs. Let's look at the numbers. In USD terms, the portfolio started at 10K. By September 2024, it had already collapsed to 2.7K. It staged a strong rally into December, peaking at 8,400, but that didn't last. Today, it's all the way down at just 1.4K, an 86% drawdown from the start. In Bitcoin terms, the picture looks even worse. The portfolio began with 0.149 BTC. By November 2024, that dropped to 0.044, a 70% loss against Bitcoin. December brought a rebound to 0.084 Bitcoin, but since then it has completely unraveled. Right now it's at just 0.013 BTC, which means a 91% performance versus simply holding Bitcoin. So, what's the takeaway? Becker went all in on narratives, gaming, and AI, but the execution didn't pay off. The rallies were sharp but short-lived, and long-term holders got crushed compared to just sitting in Bitcoin. Final numbers: minus 86% in USD, minus 91% in BTC terms. High-risk approach didn't pay off. Jung, one of the biggest names in crypto YouTube with over 2 million subscribers. We're taking a look back at his portfolio from October 2023, titled Top 5 Cryptos to Invest in. The portfolio was simple: Bitcoin, ETH, XRP, Cardano, and Atom. No small caps, no meme plays, just large cap, high conviction bets. Performance has been mixed. XRP was the clear standout. It delivered close to a 5x from the lows. On the other end, Atom disappointed badly, dropping around 40%. The rest, ETH and ADA, moved with the broader market but didn't outperform. Now, let's look at the charts. In USD terms, the portfolio started at 10K. It climbed to 22K during the March 2024 high, only to fall back hard to 12K by September. From there, it rallied into January 2025, reaching 34K at the peak, and today it's sitting around 29K. That's still close to a 3x from the start, which is solid given the drawdowns along the way. But in Bitcoin terms, it's a different story. The portfolio started with 0.31 BTC. It briefly spiked to 0.37 in December 2023, but then bled heavily throughout 2024, bottoming at just 0.18 in November. A strong recovery followed, with a local high of 0.33 in December, but today it's back down at 0.26. That means it's still underwater compared to simply holding Bitcoin. So, what's the takeaway here? If you just look at USD, the portfolio looks like a success: steady gains, big peak, and still nearly a 3x. But if you're measuring against Bitcoin, which is the real benchmark in crypto, it didn't manage to outperform in the long run. Final numbers: plus 192% in USD, but minus 15% in BTC terms. Even though it lost to Bitcoin, it is still one of the best portfolios among influencers. Coin Bureau, one of the most respected names in crypto, known for his careful, research-driven approach. In November 2023, they released a portfolio with 6 coins: Arbitrum, Solana, Metis, Injective, Rocket Pool, and Dassault. As of today, Solana is the star performer, running over 200% from the lows. But the rest of the portfolio didn't deliver. Most coins ended up in the red. Let's break it down. In USD terms, the portfolio from the initial 10K. By March 2024, it had rocketed to 33K, more than a 3x in just 4 months. But from there, things went south. By September, it had given up all gains and was back to break-even. A December rally took it to 20.5K, but by April it collapsed to 6.7K. Since then, it's recovered, and today it's roughly back to where it started, essentially flat after a roller coaster ride. In Bitcoin terms, the story is even more brutal. The portfolio started at 0.26 BTC. By January 2024, it surged to 0.68 BTC, an incredible plus 160% outperformance against Bitcoin. But after that peak, it steadily bled value. By June 2025, it bottomed at just 0.07 BTC, down 73% from the start. Since then, it has clawed back a little, now sitting at 0.09 BTC, still 66% below simply holding Bitcoin. The key takeaway here: this was one of the best performing influencer portfolios right after launch, but it completely lost steam. Without Solana, the numbers would look even worse, and compared to just holding BTC, the long-term results fell apart. Final numbers, roughly break-even in USD, but minus 66% in BTC terms. A strong start, but no staying power. Murad, the man behind the meme coin supercycle idea, and one of the few who stuck entirely to meme coins when everyone else was talking blue chips and AI. His September 2024 portfolio was as pure as it gets: 10 memes, including SBX 6900, Mog, Apu, Popcat, and Giga. The results are absolutely wild to this day. In USD terms, the portfolio started at 10K. Within just 4 months, it skyrocketed to 169K in January 2025. Then came the correction, a brutal drop to 31K in March. But it wasn't over. By July, the portfolio ripped to a new all-time high at 205K, over 20x from the start. Since then, it's cooled off again, currently sitting around 90K. That's still a 9x in less than a year. In Bitcoin terms, the ride looks just as extreme. From a starting point 18 BTC, the portfolio went parabolic, hitting over 1.8 BTC in October 2024, a 10x in just 1 month. After correcting to 0.39 BTC, it into November and almost made a new high, but since then it's been bleeding value against Bitcoin. Right now it sits at 0.82 BTC, which is still more than a 4x from the beginning. What stands out here is how concentrated the gains were. Just like before, SBX did the heavy lifting, carrying the entire portfolio. A few others like USA held up decently, but most of the list underperformed. Without SBX, these results wouldn't look anywhere near as impressive. Still, the bottom line is hard to ignore. Murad's meme-only bet crushed every other influencer portfolio, both in USD and BTC terms. Even after steep drawdowns, it's one of the few still showing massive outperformance over Bitcoin. Final numbers, plus 800% in USD, plus 316% in BTC. One of the riskiest bets, but this time it worked out well. Deutscher, known for chasing hot narratives and early-stage tokens. In November 2024, he shared a portfolio built almost entirely around AI and infrastructure plays. The picks included Grass, Neural, Pinlink, Guru, Tau, Near, and Spec. For a moment, it looked like a winning strategy. In USD terms, the portfolio started at 10K and almost doubled within a month, hitting 19K in December 2024. But the rally didn't last. By April 2025, it had collapsed to just 2.7K, and since then it's mostly moved sideways. The recent action has been even worse, with a new low of 2.4K, a 76% drawdown from the start. In Bitcoin terms, the decline looks even sharper. The portfolio began at 0.11 and climbed to 0.19 BTC during the December rally, but after that it completely fell apart. By April, it had dropped to 0.035 BTC. By June, a new low of 0.025 BTC. And recently it hit yet another low, 0.022. That's an 80% loss versus simply holding Bitcoin. The key takeaway here is how quickly this portfolio lost relevance. It had a strong launch, but within months it was bleeding against both USD and BTC and never recovered. Compared to Bitcoin, the destruction has been relentless. Final numbers, minus 76% in USD, minus 80% in BTC. A good start, but then a total collapse. Ran from crypto Banter, one of the most watched influencers in the space. In April 2025, he shared a portfolio mixing majors, hot narratives, and even stocks. The picks included Bitcoin, Solana hype, plus equity exposure through Coinbase, Tesla, and MicroStrategy. In USD terms, the portfolio quickly rallied to 17.5K in May. Since then, it hasn't broken down. Instead, it's been moving sideways while making higher highs and higher lows. Most recently, it pushed to a new high at 18.9K, up almost 90% from the start. In Bitcoin terms, the story is similar but with tighter margins. It began at 0.13 BTC, climbed to 0.15 in May, then gave back those gains by early August, returning to the starting point. After that, it ran to a new high of 0.16 BTC in September, before correcting to today's 0.15, still plus 14% against Bitcoin. The key takeaway here is stability. Unlike most influencer portfolios that peak early and then collapse, this one has held its ground. It's steadily outperforming in both USD and BTC terms, and so far looks like one of the better balanced approaches. Final numbers: plus 89% in USD, plus 14% in BTC. Solid performance with consistency. Keep in mind that Rand changes his portfolio picks very frequently. Alex Becker back again. We already looked at his March 2024 list, which was heavy on gaming and AI. In November 2024, he doubled down on the AI narrative. Tokens included Distra, AIA's Prime 0x0, Neural, HashAI, GPU, and ZKML. In USD terms, the portfolio started with a small pop to 13K in December, but from there, things unraveled quickly. By April 2025, it had collapsed to just 2K, and recently it set a fresh low at 1.8K, an 82% loss from the start. In Bitcoin terms, the damage is even clearer. The portfolio began at 0.11 BTC, edged slightly higher to 0.13 and then went straight down. On April 7th, it hit a low of 0.027 BTC. Since then, the bleed hasn't stopped. The most recent low came in at 0.016. That's an 86% drawdown against Bitcoin. The key takeaway is that this second AI-focused portfolio ended up just like Becker's first, a quick bounce followed by relentless collapse. The coins were all tied to the same hot narrative, which left no room for protection once sentiment turned. Final numbers: minus 82% in USD, minus 86% in BTC. Another portfolio that looked good at launch but lost relevance fast. Virtual Bacon, one of the more analytical creators in the space, known for breaking down narratives rather than chasing hype. In March 2025, he shared a portfolio built mostly around majors. About 85% was allocated to Bitcoin, ETH, and Solana. The rest was spread across higher-risk plays like Super, Beam, Tau, and a couple of others. In USD terms, the portfolio started at 10K. It dipped to 7.7K in April during the correction, but since then has been steadily climbing. Recently, it reached a high of 16.2K before cooling slightly to 14.2K. That's a plus 42% gain from the start. In Bitcoin terms, the trend is similar. The portfolio began at 0.11 BTC, dropped slightly in April and again in June, forming a clear double bottom. From there, it's been on the rise, hitting a recent high of 0.13 BTC. That's about a plus 23% outperformance against Bitcoin. The key takeaway here is that keeping the majority in majors has provided both stability and steady growth. The small allocation to alts hasn't hurt the portfolio too much, and the dominance of BTC, ETH, and Sol kept it strong even through the corrections. Final numbers: plus 42% in USD, plus 23% in BTC, a cautious but effective portfolio. Lark Davis, another well-known name in the crypto influencer space. Back in April 2024, he shared a portfolio that leaned into riskier plays: FTM, Nibiru, MPC, Jupiter, Ordiswap, AIT, and EMC. No Bitcoin, no ETH, no majors at all, just mid-caps and smaller names. In USD terms, the results have been brutal. The portfolio went straight down. By September 2024, it was already at 3K, bounced to 6.2K in December, but then collapsed again. It hit 1.6K in April 2025, set a new low of 1.1K in June, and today is sitting at just 1,300. That's an 87% loss in USD. In Bitcoin terms, it's even worse. The portfolio began at 0.16 BTC and has been in constant decline. By November 2024, it was at 0.043 BTC, and by June 2025, it set a new low at 0.011. That's a staggering 93% against Bitcoin. The key takeaway here is simple: without majors to anchor the portfolio, there's no protection when alts collapse. Even with a December bounce, the downside has been overwhelming and the portfolio has completely lost relevance. Final numbers: minus 87% in USD, minus 93% in BTC. One of the worst performing influencer portfolios so far. Virtual Bacon again, but this time we're going back further to January 2023. This portfolio is one of the oldest I've tracked. The allocation was fairly balanced: majors like Bitcoin, ETH, Solana, some stables, Chainlink, and a few others. In USD terms, it started at 10K and went mostly sideways for a long stretch. But since September 2023, it began trending up with a clear pattern of higher highs and higher lows. Recently, it nearly touched a 3x gain, and right now it's still sitting close to its peak. In Bitcoin terms, it tells a different story. The portfolio started at 0.478 BTC, but over the years it has gradually bled value. By June 2025, it hit its lowest point, and right now it's worth only about half of its initial Bitcoin value. The takeaway is clear. Holding a diversified basket with majors and stables worked well in USD, but against Bitcoin, it lagged heavily over time. This is the oldest portfolio in the dataset, and it highlights how difficult it is to beat simply holding BTC long-term. Final numbers: nearly plus 200% in USD, but minus 50% in BTC. Even though it underperformed Bitcoin, it still did much better long-term than higher-risk portfolios. Numbers don't lie.